A 7-foot titan weighing 300 pounds and covered in foreign blood crashed through the sliding doors of Mercy General, instantly turning a Tuesday night into a massacre waiting to happen. He tossed 3 security guards like rag dolls, sending doctors fleeing and patients screaming, while police were still 10 minutes out. In the midst of the chaos, an unlikely figure stepped forward, Aurora. She was the mousy rookie nurse who had been scolded for trembling hands just an hour earlier, yet she didn't run. Instead, she walked right up to the giant, looked him in the eye, and did the unthinkable, freezing the hospital in disbelief and proving that the mouse was actually a lion in scrubs. The clock on the wall of the emergency department at Mercy General Hospital in Chicago clicked over to 10 p.m. It was a rainy Tuesday in November, the kind of night where the cold seeps into your bones and the ambulance bay doors rattle in their frames from the wind. Inside the triage station, the fluorescent lights hummed with that headache-inducing flicker that only night shift workers truly understand. "Aurora, for God's sake, move faster!" The sharp voice of head nurse Brenda Miller cut through the low murmur of the ER. Brenda was 50, cynical, and moved with the efficiency of someone who had seen it all and liked none of it. She stood with her hands on her hips, glaring at the newest addition to the nursing staff. Aurora Jenkins flinched. She was 28, but she looked younger. She was slight, barely 5'4", with messy brown hair pulled back in a loose clip that always seemed on the verge of falling out. Her scrubs looked a size too big, swallowing her frame. She kept her head down, her eyes fixed on the IV tray she was organizing. "I'm sorry, Brenda," Aurora mumbled, her voice barely a whisper. "I just wanted to make sure the saline ratios were—" "I don't pay you to check ratios that the pharmacy already checked," Brenda snapped, snatching a chart from the counter. "I pay you to get needles in arms and clear beds. You've been here 3 weeks, Jenkins, and you're still moving like you're afraid the floor is going to bite you. Dr. Sterling is already asking why I hired you." Aurora nodded, her face flushing crimson. She didn't argue. She never argued. Since she had arrived at Mercy General, Aurora had been a ghost. She ate lunch alone in her car. She never joined the other nurses for drinks after shifts. When trauma cases came in, car wrecks, shootings, the gritty stuff, Aurora always faded into the background, handling paperwork or stocking supplies, leaving the blood and guts to the real nurses. The general consensus among the staff was that Aurora Jenkins was soft. She was a hospitality hire, someone who belonged in a quiet dermatology clinic, not the inner-city meat grinder of a level 1 trauma center. "Look at her," whispered intense Dr. Gregory Sterling to a resident near the coffee machine. Sterling was the attending physician that night, arrogant, brilliant, and possessed of a god complex that barely fit through the double doors. He gestured with his coffee cup toward Aurora, who was struggling to unlock a supply cabinet. "She's shaking, literally shaking. If a real bleeder comes in tonight, she's going to faint. Mark my words," the resident chuckled. "Maybe she's just cold?" "She's scared," Sterling said dismissively. "Some people have the stomach for this, and some people don't. She's prey. In the wild, she'd be eaten in 5 minutes." Aurora heard them. She had ears like a bat, though she pretended not to. She finally got the cabinet open, grabbed a box of gauze, and hurried toward bed 4 to dress a minor laceration on a construction worker's hand. As she worked, her hands did tremble slightly. But if anyone had looked closely, really closely, they would have noticed something strange. The tremble wasn't fear. It was restraint. When the construction worker, a burly man named Mike, winced as she cleaned the wound, Aurora's voice changed. It dropped an octave, becoming soothing, almost hypnotic. "Deep breath, Mike. Look at the wall. Count the tiles. You're okay. I've got you." Her movements, clumsy when she was being watched by Brenda, suddenly became fluid and precise. She wrapped the bandage with a speed and symmetry that was almost mechanical. Tight, efficient, perfect. Mike looked down at his hand. "Damn, nurse. That was fast. You done this before?" Aurora blinked, seemingly snapping out of a trance. She hunched her shoulders again, returning to the mousy rookie persona. Oh, a little. In nursing school. Just practice. She scurried away before he could ask anything else. Back at the nurses' station, the radio crackled to life. The static hiss signaled an incoming ambulance. Mercy Base, this is Unit 42. We are inbound, ETA 3 minutes. We have a walk-in picked up off 5th and Main. Male, approx 40s. Highly agitated. Possible substance abuse. He's big. Really big. Vital signs are stable, but he's non-compliant. Brenda rolled her eyes and keyed the mic. Copy, 42. Drop him in Bay 2. Probably just another drunk fighting the air. She looked at Aurora. Jenkins, take Bay 2, and try not to let him vomit on you. If he gets rowdy, call security. Don't try to be a hero. Yes, ma'am, Aurora said softly. If only Brenda knew. Heroism was the last thing on Aurora's mind. She just wanted to survive the shift. But the universe, as it often does, had other plans. The man in the ambulance wasn't just a drunk. And he wasn't just big. He was a walking avalanche. The sliding doors of the ambulance bay hissed open, letting in a gust of rain and the smell of wet asphalt. The paramedics of Unit 42 didn't just wheel the stretcher in. They looked like they were fleeing a crime scene. Clear the way, one paramedic shouted, his face pale. He refused the restraints. He's walking. What? Brenda looked up from her computer. You let a psych patient walk in? Before the paramedic could answer, a shadow fell over the triage desk. The man who stepped out of the back of the ambulance had to duck his head to clear the doorframe. He was immense. He stood at least 6'10", a towering wall of muscle and scar tissue. He wore a torn, mud-stained army jacket that was 2 sizes too small for his chest, and his pants were ripped at the knees. But it was his face that stopped the room. A thick, matted beard covered his jaw, and a jagged scar ran from his left eyebrow down to his lip. His eyes were wide, darting around the room with the frantic, feral intensity of a trapped animal. He was sweating profusely despite the cold, his chest heaving like a bellows. His name, though no one knew it yet, was Sergeant Jackson the Bull Hayes, and he was currently operating in a reality that existed only in his head. Where is she? Jackson roared. His voice was a baritone thunderclap that rattled the glass partition of the reception desk. The waiting room went silent. A baby stopped crying. Dr. Sterling stepped out of Trauma Room 1, looking annoyed. Excuse me, you cannot scream in here. This is a hospital. Lower your voice, or I will have you removed. It was the wrong thing to say. Jackson's head snapped toward Sterling. In his mind, he wasn't in a Chicago ER. The fluorescent lights were the blinding sun of the Korangal Valley. The beeping monitors were radio signals, and Dr. Sterling wasn't a doctor. He was an interrogator. I said, "Where is she?" Jackson lunged. The movement was terrifyingly fast for a man of his size. He covered the 20 feet to the nurse's station in 3 strides. "Security!" Brenda shrieked, diving behind the counter. 2 hospital security guards, Paul and Dave, were stationed by the vending machines. Paul was a retired cop, heavy-set and slow. Dave was a 20-year-old college student working part-time. They rushed forward, batons drawn. "Sir, get on the ground!" Paul shouted, reaching for Jackson's arm. It was like a toddler trying to stop a freight train. Jackson didn't even look at Paul. He simply backhanded the guard without breaking stride. The blow caught Paul in the chest, lifting the 200-pound man off his feet and sending him crashing into a cart of sterile equipment. Metal trays clattered loudly across the floor. Dave, the younger guard, froze. He held his baton up, shaking. Sir, please." Jackson grabbed Dave by the vest, lifted him one-handed, and tossed him aside like a bag of laundry. Dave slid across the polished floor and hit the wall with a sickening thud. Chaos erupted. Nurses screamed and scattered. Patients in the waiting room scrambled over chairs to get to the exit. Dr. Sterling, realizing his authority meant nothing to a giant in a fugue state, turned pale and backed away, colliding with a crash cart. He's got a weapon! Someone screamed. Jackson didn't have a gun, but he had ripped a metal IV pole out of its stand. He held the heavy steel rod like a baseball bat, swinging it in a wide arc. "Get down! Everyone get down!" he bellowed, his eyes seeing invisible enemies. "Incoming! Mortars! Get down!" He smashed the IV pole into the reception desk, shattering the safety glass. Shards rained down on the receptionists who were huddled underneath, screaming. Aurora Jenkins was standing by bed 2, clutching a clipboard to her chest. She watched the carnage unfold with wide eyes. Her heart hammered against her ribs. But unlike the others, she wasn't running. She was observing. She saw the way Jackson moved. He wasn't stumbling like a drunk. He was checking corners. He was clearing his sectors. He was protecting his flank. He's not crazy, she thought, her mind racing. He's tactical. She looked at his wrist as he swung the pole. A faded tattoo. 75th, Ranger Regiment. He's having a flashback, Aurora whispered to herself. "Jenkins, run, you idiot!" Brenda screamed from behind the desk. "Get to the break room and lock the door." Aurora didn't move. She couldn't. If she ran, someone was going to die. Dr. Sterling was cornered against the wall, and Jackson was advancing on him, raising the metal pole for a killing blow. "Tell me where the extraction point is!" Jackson screamed at the terrified doctor, saliva flying from his mouth. "Tell me!" Dr. Sterling held up his hands, sobbing. "I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. Please!" Jackson roared and tensed his muscles to swing. Aurora dropped her clipboard. It hit the floor with a clack. She didn't run away. She walked forward. The distance between Aurora and the giant was 30 feet. To the onlookers peeking out from behind curtains and overturned chairs, it looked like a suicide attempt. Aurora looked like a child next to him. A stiff breeze could knock her over. "Aurora, no!" a nurse named Jessica cried out. Aurora ignored her. She didn't run. Running triggers a predator response. She walked with a deliberate, rhythmic pace. She didn't look at his weapon. She looked at his eyes. She stopped 10 feet away from him. "Sergeant Hayes!" Her voice wasn't the whispery, timid voice of Aurora the rookie. It was sharp, clear, and projected from the diaphragm. It was a command voice. Jackson froze. The metal pole hovered inches from Dr. Sterling's head. The use of his rank, Sergeant, cut through the fog in his brain for a split second. He spun around, searching for the source of the command. He saw a small woman in oversized blue scrubs, but in his hallucination, she was blurry. "Identify!" Jackson barked, lowering his center of gravity, ready to strike her. "Corpsman up!" Aurora shouted. The terminology was specific. It was the call for a medic on the battlefield. Jackson blinked, confusion warring with the rage in his eyes. "Doc?" "Stand down, Ranger," Aurora said, her voice hard as iron. She took a step closer, her hands open, but held at chest level, non-threatening, but ready. "We are in the green zone. The perimeter is secure. You are flagging a friendly. Lower your weapon." Dr. Sterling, still cowering on the floor, looked up at Aurora in bewilderment. What was she saying? What was a green zone? Jackson shook his head, fighting the visions. No, they're coming. The insurgents. They have the perimeter. I have to find Mary. Mary is safe, Aurora lied instantly, her tone unwavering. She stepped closer, 5 feet now. She was well within his striking range. One swing of that pole would shatter every bone in her upper body. I just radioed command. Mary is at the LZ, landing zone. She's waiting for you, Sergeant. But you can't go to her with a weapon. You know the protocol. Jackson's breathing hitched. He looked at the pole in his hands, then back at Aurora. The rage was starting to crack, replaced by a desperate, heartbreaking sorrow. I can't protect her, he choked out, a tear cutting a clean line through the blood and dirt on his cheek. I'm too slow. I'm always too slow. You're not slow, Aurora said softly, changing her tone from commanding to comforting. She took another step. She was 2 feet away. She had to crane her neck to look him in the eye. You're the lead element. But the fight is over, Jackson. Weapon down. She reached out a trembling hand, not trembling from fear this time, but from adrenaline, and touched the cold steel of the IV pole. Give it to me, Sergeant. Takedown. For a heartbeat, the room suspended in silence. Everyone held their breath. Jackson's grip on the pole loosened. He looked at Aurora, his eyes searching hers for any sign of deception. Is everyone safe? He whispered. All clear, Aurora said. Jackson let out a shuddering sigh and released the pole. Aurora took it and gently set it on the floor. But then the spell broke. Behind them, the elevator doors dinged loudly. 2 police officers burst out, guns drawn, shouting at the top of their lungs. Police, drop it! Get on the ground, now! The sudden noise shattered the fragile reality Aurora had built. Jackson's eyes snapped wide open. The officers weren't friendlies. They were the enemy ambush. The green zone was gone. Ambush! Jackson screamed. He didn't go for the pole. He went for Aurora. In his mind, she was now a threat, a spy who had tricked him. He reached out with a hand the size of a catcher's mitt and grabbed Aurora by the throat. He lifted her off the ground as if she weighed nothing. Traitor! He roared, squeezing. Shoot him! Shoot him! Dr. Sterling screamed from the floor. The police officers hesitated, fearing they would hit the nurse. Aurora dangled in the air, her feet kicking helplessly. Her vision began to spot with black dots. The pressure on her windpipe was immense. He was going to crush her larynx in seconds. But Aurora Jenkins didn't panic. Her face turned purple, but her eyes remained laser-focused. She didn't claw at his hands like a victim. She reached for his thumb. She knew something the police, the doctors, and even Jackson didn't know. She knew how to dismantle a human body. Aurora swung her legs up, wrapping them around Jackson's massive bicep to gain leverage. She isolated his thumb, bent it backward against the joint, and simultaneously drove her elbow into the bundle of nerves in his forearm. It was a Krav Maga maneuver, executed with the precision of a master. Jackson roared in pain, his grip involuntarily releasing. Aurora dropped to the floor, gasping for air. But she didn't retreat. As Jackson stumbled back, clutching his arm, he swung a wild haymaker punch at her head, a blow that would have decapitated her. Aurora ducked under the punch, pivoting on her left heel. She moved behind him, kicked the back of his knee to buckle his leg, and locked her arm around his neck. She wasn't choking him. She was applying a vascular sleeper hold. She cinched it tight, pressing her carotid arteries against his, cutting off the blood flow to his brain. "Sleep, Sergeant," she rasped into his ear, her voice straining with the effort of holding back 300 pounds of thrashing muscle. "Just sleep." Jackson bucked like a wild bronco. He slammed backward into the wall, trying to crush her. Aurora grunted but held on. She wrapped her legs around his waist, locking her ankles. The hooks were in. She was a backpack of doom attached to a giant. The police officers stood there, guns lowered, mouths agape. Dr. Sterling watched in stunned silence. 10 seconds. 20 seconds. Jackson's thrashing slowed. His arms fell to his sides. His massive legs gave out. Aurora rode him down to the floor, maintaining the hold until she felt his body go completely limp. She checked his pulse, strong and steady, then released him and rolled away, gasping for breath, massaging her bruised throat. The room was dead silent. The only sound was the hum of the vending machine and Aurora's ragged breathing. She sat up, adjusted her messy hair clip, and pulled her oversized scrubs back into place. She looked up to see 50 pairs of eyes staring at her. Head nurse Brenda slowly stood up from behind the desk. "Jenkins," she whispered. "What? Who are you?" Aurora looked down at her hands. They were shaking again. She looked at the unconscious giant, then at the police officers. "He needs 10 milligrams of haloperidol and 2 of Ativan," Aurora rasped, her voice hoarse. "And get a cardiac monitor. He's got an arrhythmia." She stood up, ignoring the stares.